According to the reports that you are receiving, what is the humanitarian situation in Gaza Strip at the moment?
Good morning. To say that the humanitarian situation in Gaza is catastrophic would be an understatement. And first, it's important to recall that Gaza has lived a humanitarian nightmare for over 16 years. Gaza has lived under an air, land, and sea blockade imposed by Israel since 2007. There are about 2.2, 2.3 million people that live in this minuscule strip of land, and half of this population are children, which explain the significant casualties among children in Gaza. Sadly, toddlers in Gaza, it's common for toddlers in Gaza to die in airstrikes before they can even say the words mama or baba, mom or dad. When it comes to the humanitarian situation, it's grim and the picture is changing rapidly. There is mass displacement. Close to 300,000 people have been displaced inside Gaza. This number is about to rise. They are trapped inside Gaza. They cannot go anywhere. And the options to seek shelter are going down by the hour because of the constant shelling. There is a lack of all the basics you can think of, from electricity to food, drinking water, fuel. And they will run out soon of what's remaining inside of Gaza. Hospitals also are running out of fuel. They cannot run the generators, and without fuel and electricity, life-saving machines in hospital are soon to be out of service, rising the risks of death among the injured patients. Hospitals are also running out of medicines. Doctors in Gaza are now saying that they are using in one day the same amount of medicine that they are usually using in 1 month. Bodies are piling up. Morgues are full. Hospitals have had to erect tents outside of their facilities to receive bodies. So it's a grim, grim humanitarian picture. And as I'm sharing these facts with you, it's also important to note that because of the constant shelling, humanitarian and health workers are restricted in their ability to move, to go out, to reach populations in need, to deliver assistance, because the risk, the likelihood of being targeted right now for humanitarian and health worker in Gaza is incredibly high.
Israel announced the siege of all Gaza Strip. How can medical and civil defense teams reach areas in Gaza Strip after bombardment? And how can aid be delivered to vulnerable areas?
First, it's important to mention that when Israel announces publicly that it will impose a siege on Gaza, it is stating its intent to commit a violation of international humanitarian law, which can amount to war crimes. And here the crimes of one side cannot justify the crimes of the other. So this is exactly what has led us to this non-ending cycle of violence. So as I said, with a complete siege, delivering aid and providing assistance and protection to civilians is incredibly hard. As I also said, because of the constant shelling, the options for civilians to shelter and seek refuge are being reduced by the hour. This complete siege on Gaza is a collective punishment. And once again, civilians are the ones paying the highest price. Right now, the clock is ticking in Gaza. All supplies of food, electricity, water, fuel, anything you can think of are expected to run out within the next hours. So the worst has yet to come in Gaza. And because of the speed and the scale of destructions and bombardment, everything could collapse in Gaza within the next hours.
More than 260,000 people have been displaced from their homes in Gaza as the Israeli military continues to bombard the Palestinian enclave. The UN said where people who have been displaced from their homes in Gaza could be evacuated.
As I said, because of the bombardment, it's very hard for displaced people right now to seek refuge. the large part of people who have been displaced have sought refuge in schools that are run by the UN agency UNRWA, but these schools are now overcrowded. They're not fit to accommodate such high number of people, and certainly not for an extended period of time. And as we've seen in this operation and in the past, there have been indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks on all sides in Gaza. So it's not excluded that even the places where civilians are seeking shelter right now can be targeted.
The US says it is discussing with Israel and Egypt about trying to get a safe passage for Gaza civilians. Is it possible?
It's hard to tell, and especially when the bombardment are ongoing. We've seen that yesterday, as civilians were evacuated and leaving through the crossing point of Rafah, which takes them from Gaza to Egypt, they were bombarded. So the international community must obtain strong guarantees from Israel and its army that they will not bomb and strike civilians as they are trying to flee and escape. This is international humanitarian law. Striking and hitting civilians under any circumstances, and probably even more as they're seeking to flee, is a violation and can qualify as a war crime. So this remains to be seen. But what the international community should do now is to uphold its obligation to uphold international humanitarian law, and this has to apply to its friends and foes alike. Instead, what we've seen over the years is that the international community has undermined the same international institutions and global convention it created. Sadly, the international community has played a significant role in the escalation we are seeing today between Hamas and Israel by not holding accountable both sides of the conflict to the same standards. So now what the international community has to do is certainly to call for an immediate de-escalation, to exert pressure on all sides of the conflict to stop killing civilians, to stop targeting civilians, and to obtain guarantees for a safe and unhindered access and delivery of humanitarian assistance.
As the war enters its fifth day, 900 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, with the Israeli death toll climbing to 1,200 people. Is there a danger that the number of victims on both sides will increase?
Probably, as long as the fighting, this is what history has shown, as long as fighting doesn't stop, the civilians will continue to pay the highest price. It's important also when we speak of the casualties in Gaza, many bodies are lying now under the rubble. They have not been recovered yet. So the casualties, the death toll in Gaza will continue to increase. Israel is still continuing to launch indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks in Gaza. Gaza is overpopulated, and on the other side, Israel also will continue to face attacks from Hamas and other Palestinian groups. So civilians on both sides are going to pay the price of this escalation.
Mrs. Naili, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.